Yeah, I have a question about the noise, and that's basically who's paying for this? Because the city says we are not going to pay for this, the team has to pay for this. But how do we make sure that this stuff gets brought up in the negotiations, that somebody will actually pay for this?
Yeah, no, it's a good point, and all of this is to be negotiated. The Mayor and City Council have put out a series of negotiating principles. If you read those principles, they're actually quite strong, and they've set us up to have the best deal with Major League Ball out of the 30 ballparks. However, the details are in the actual agreement. So what we would expect to see is a lease agreement or a development agreement with the A's, and I, as a person who does those kinds of agreements, what I would say back to the community is you want to see that stipulated in that kind of agreement. You want to have clarity at that point when you make the actual transaction. Because what's hard to do is come back later and say, oh, we'd really like to have that when the transaction is completed. So there's
clarity in development agreement.
So there are a couple of things you can do. Some things you can specify with certainty in the agreement, and then some things you can only point toward and describe the process that you'll use. So if I were living here and looking at this, what I would look at is, the way I'm thinking about it, if I can just really get it. This is in some ways, a bit of a report card. And what you ought to be able to do is not only deal with the A's, some of them deal with high-speed rail, some of them deal with future development, is you'd want to see these points in actual contractual language before the transaction takes place. That would be the strongest way to make sure that they get it.
And how would we do that? How would we track that?
Well, one of the recommendations here, and I'll read it, the two overall recommendations, there are three of them. One is that this will direct us as bureaucrats to consider all of these points as we're negotiating the agreements. Two, it will reappoint a smaller Good Neighbor Committee to continue meeting. And then three, it'll have the Good Neighbor Committee specifically have a Major League Ballpark subgroup that we would be able to work back and forth with. So that doesn't mean we're going to do it perfectly, but it does mean you have a channel of communication to say, hey, that's great, or oh no, wait a minute, that's not so good.
But how can we be certain it's in the actual agreement? At what point do we jump in and where do we speak? And is it a city council meeting? Is it a planning commission meeting? How do we actually?
The final agreement would come to city council, and what we would do is we daylight that agreement, ideally with enough time so that everybody, not only the Good Neighbor Committee, but the surrounding area could understand what is and isn't in it.
Okay, question over here in the corner.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I'm very proud that the city of San Jose is thinking big, and the neighborhood is thinking big about the development opportunity and acting like the big city that it is. And my specific comment that I want to make sure is heard is that incorporating maintenance into this deal is going to be huge. And there's a suggestion here in this in the framework, to employ a private maintenance company like Groundworks in this area. And I think that's just going to, it's just, we can have all the pretty pictures in the world, great plans. Like the idea of, doing a trail along Coyote Creek. I love it. When you go to the Guadalupe River and you do not want to look into that river, it's disgusting. And then we spent like $1 billion on that park improvement along the Guadalupe River, or whatever it was. We've got to make sure, that people are, proud of these improvements and that they are maintained beyond the, the ribbon cutting.
I'm going to paraphrase this, but I share your concern because I think that we need to feel there's a level of community ownership in this process, and I think that's another reason why you're here, is that your ideas need to be incorporated, and that way you're part of the process the same way that our neighborhood association helped write those negotiating principles back from the arena. Good point.
Would it be smart to create some kind of an establishment period with the agreement with the A's so that they
Probation?
Yeah, exactly. Maybe a 3-5 year establishment period after we've agreed to bring them on. So that they have to maintain a certain amount of things.
Good point.
Just a quick question. How many years of use will this facility be for?
That's an MLB question. I don't know.
It used to be in the olden days that ball carts lasted forever. And now teams want newer facilities more frequently. So are we going to be left for 20 years with the facilities?
One of the negotiating principles, and I actually should introduce council members, Sam Licardo, our downtown council member, who's here. One of the negotiation principles deals with that, because the last thing you want to do is have a wonderful stadium built, ballpark built, have it be used, and then, wait a minute, they go away and you've got this big piece here. So one of the principles states that at the end of the term, they either have to, either have to demo the building and turn the land back over to us, or, that's what the or is, but, yeah.
Either have to pay fair market value for the land.
Right.
Or, as you said, demo the stadium and
turn the
of course,
land back
the
to
land
us.
remains in the city's.
Right, because the last thing we want to end up with is something that is derelict or something that's outgone its useful life from an MLB perspective.
So the redevelopment agency will own the land itself.
The city will likely own the land in the long term because the redevelopment agency goes out of business over time, but there will be a long-term ground lease as one of the options.
There's an interesting website called fieldofschemes.org, which has been tracking what's going on with most of the major league parks. And the pattern is that it doesn't matter what the term sheet is, the team keeps coming back year after year saying, we can't make money, and so we need to follow it. And if you want a classic example, the Indiana Pacers have just told Indianapolis that they are not going to pay their rent. They would like the city to pay their rent, because otherwise the stadium will be empty. The city has the problem of saying, if we say no, we will be known as the council that lost the Pacers. No city government has ever been able to stand up to, we are the government or the mayor or the council that lost Team X. And so what has happened is that these leases, regardless of the initial term sheet, continue to get watered down. 3 or 4 weeks after this confrontation, Indianapolis City Council voted $30 million to the Pacers with apparently no purpose in mind. So if you really want closure on this issue, you can't leave it just to the elected officials. They can't handle the pressure. We would need something in there that says anything that would change the terms by more than $1 million would have to go to a public vote.
I might suggest as an example closer to home. It's called the San Jose Sharks. We currently pull about $4 to $5 million in general fund revenue every single year for the operations of that arena. To my knowledge, we've never given back any of that money. The only additional obligations we've made have been through improvements to the arena which we own and were contemplated from the very beginning. So I think it's important to understand your job, of course, is to keep us accountable, but we have a pretty good track record.
Okay. Is there anyone that has not asked a question yet? Huh? Oh, I know. I'm trying to get clarification.
Jessica.
What about the fact that the game's annual revenue is less than $200 million a year compared to Adobe's $3 billion?
Can you repeat that question? We have
So Adobe has the towers and their revenue is $3 billion. They don't impact the city as much as the ballpark. The A's revenue is less than $200 billion, and it impacts everybody. So where about that?
Everybody heard the question?
Repeat it.
The question is, the A's annual revenue is $200 million, Adobe's is $3 billion, and the implication being that isn't getting another Adobe a better deal than the ballpark, for one. And somebody would like to speak on that. One thing I'd like to say is,
I see Lee waves his hand in the back.
all right, Lee, you'd be perfect. I would like to say though, when the mayor established the committee, the very first meeting, the very first thing the mayor said was, I'm not a baseball fan, and I believe that an 18-story tower on that site would be better financially for the city than a ballpark. But I believe that a ballpark has intangible values, and many people want one, and we're establishing this committee. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I was going to say the same thing. I think when the financials break down, the mayor is absolutely correct. However, we have the Sperano building that's been empty for I don't know how many years, and we've lost, I think over a million square feet of commercial property within the last 2 years. So, we have a major league team wanting to locate there right now that is an economic value.